Welcome to Chat with the Lawyer. I'm your host, Walla Blagay, and today we have a celebrity in the house, Delegate Darryl Barnes from the 25th Legislative District. And we also happen to be sitting in the 25th Legislative District, so we're proud to have our delegate on the show. He also happens to be the Deputy Whip in the Maryland General Assembly and also the Vice Chair of the Legislative Black Caucus. So we're going to have fun today. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
No problem. So tell us, how did you get to this level? What motivated you to become a delegate?
You know, I always use the words hard work, dedication, and commitment. And I believe if you use those three words and apply those to your life every day, then you can do and become anything you want to do. You know, since being in Annapolis, I've worked extremely hard to find those inroads to get into the positions that I'm in right now, and having the faith and the confidence of my colleagues to have them vote me in as the first vice chair of the Black Caucus, and having the Speaker of the House have confidence in me to name me one of the Deputy Majority Whips.
Interesting. So let's dig into what's going on in Annapolis, because a lot of people feel that Annapolis seems like a place far away.
Yeah.
And we want to bring it locally. So what are your priorities, especially the fact that you're in leadership now? What are the priorities that you're looking at in Annapolis for the 2017?
There's a lot going on in Annapolis right now, especially with the Black Caucus. We have 5 different priorities this year. Number one being medical cannabis. That is a huge priority for the Black Caucus in trying to make sure that minorities are given a license for diversity for the medical cannabis. Number 2 is education. Education is always on the forefront for any elected officials, but for the Black Caucus in particular, there's one piece of legislation that sticks out, and that is a piece of legislation that Senator Will Smith put in, actually, that stops kindergartners from being expelled in school. And you would say, kindergartners being expelled? Well, we have a high rate of kindergartners actually being expelled in the state of Maryland. Number 2 is health care, the Affordable Care Act. Right here in Prince George's County, 8% of the residents that live in Prince George's County do not have health insurance. 8%. That's roughly 79,000 people in the state, in Prince George's County, that don't have health insurance. So just to name a few, those are some of the things that stick out that we really want to focus in on. The fact that we're still fighting this HBCU lawsuit, that is another huge priority for the Legislative Black Caucus. And I'm proud to say that I've been lock arms with our chair, Delegate Cheryl Glenn, in ensuring that we adhere to those things.
So let's start with one of the ones that you discussed. Now, business is a big thing in Prince George's County. We have a lot of small business owners, and a lot of them don't feel that they are getting much from the county and state. They're not getting the opportunities. Now, you mentioned the cannabis business and how minorities lost out on that. Could you go back into what happened and how it turned out that no minorities were on the list? And also, what are we going to do about the future? Like, what happens in the future, other business opportunities that come? How do we ensure that those in Prince George's County gain access to those opportunities?
Real good question. As it relates to the medical cannabis, you know, there were 15 licenses that were pre-awarded. And out of those 15 licenses, there were no minorities. No women owned, no African American owned, no veteran owned, no nothing. So the Black Caucus felt that that was a disgrace, that was shameful, that here you have $1 billion plus industry coming to the state of Maryland with no diversity. So we had put in legislation to change that, to say that we want to ensure that they add 7 more licenses to the 15 that were awarded, which means out of those 7 will be 4 minorities to ensure that we have a piece of that opportunity. And those are for growers and processors. Where the real money is when you talk about medical cannabis. You know, there's dispensary license, which we do have a fair share in, but the real money is in the growers and the processors. So part of the problem has been with the commission itself. There has been no oversight. There was no transparency. There was no diversity study done, which created this flawed system. And I've been on record to say that I really believe that it was jacked up, that, we really should have oversight. So the legislation that we're putting in now creates an oversight or regulatory board for the commission itself to ensure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, because this is a huge industry coming to the state of Maryland. Now with this new board, with the legislation, there will actually be a paid board, which now gives us more accountability for their actions. So I'm excited about the legislation. We've had conversation with leadership. We've had conversations with the governor to ensure that we can try to get their support in this, because once again, this is a big deal. Even here in Prince George's County, there are folks that have applied or put in licenses that did not get licenses, that have the qualifications to have received a license. Now, we do have some dispensaries coming to Prince George's County that I'm excited about, because they've contacted me. They're coming to District 25, so a big shout out for us. But more importantly, we got to work that angle to make sure that we have the growers and the processors to get those licenses. And then lastly, I'll talk about, just economics in general. I'm a small business owner. So I believe in that, we need to make sure that the things that we do are fair and equitable. Last year we passed a milestone piece of legislation that gave equal pay for equal work. So every woman in the world should jump up and down when they hear my voice right now saying equal pay for equal work. So now that, the playing field is level, but, there's still more that we can do. Also that, it's a big fight right now with $15 an hour. That we really need to make sure that, our men and women have an opportunity to try to put food on the table for their families. And I believe at $8 an hour or $9 an hour, there's no way in the world that you can do that. I just referenced earlier that, we have 79,000 people that do not have health insurance. So if you're not making an adequate wage to take care of your family, then you're not going to survive. So part of what we're doing is making sure that, those triggers and measures are in place in Annapolis from the state level, which will then trickle down to the county level to make sure that our people are taken care of.
And I'm glad you brought a lot of those things up, especially the $15 wage increase. But we also want to go back to sort of the process to make sure that minority business owners get opportunity. Now, I know a couple years ago in this county and even in this district, a lot of small business owners complained that MGM came and
Sure.
they had no opportunity. There was actually an entire movement behind that, including some business owners meeting with ministers, meeting with lawyers to see how to ensure that they get better access. So what legislation is the Legislative Black Caucus looking at legislation maybe now or in the future that it can ensure that any business opportunity that comes to the state that minority-owned business owners have access?
We have some triggers already in place that I think we really need to tighten up on, which is through MDAT, to make sure that.
And can you say what is MDAT?
MDOT, I'm sorry, the Maryland Department of Transportation, which oversees minority participation. So in the state of Maryland, there's always a minority participation goal, which is roughly 20% of any large project that those minorities have to participate in. So I believe that, we need to adhere to those things, because right here in Prince George's County, we're embarking on a $6 billion growth economic opportunities that our small businesses should be taking advantage of. And most of the time when small businesses jump up and down and yell and say that they're not getting those opportunities, a lot of them do not qualify. They don't have the bonding capacity. They don't have the wherewithal or the means to meet payroll and some of the other things that's necessary to qualify for those businesses. So I've been working with Prince George's County Supply and Diversity Council to make sure that those businesses have those opportunities, that they have the proper training, that they have the proper staffing and manpower to go after those kinds of opportunities. Because at the state level, we can't so much regulate what's going on at the county levels or the municipality levels, but a lot of the triggers for minority participation in the goal rate, those things are in place right now. We just need to make sure that our small businesses have the opportunity to go after those and that they qualify for them.
Oh, that's interesting that you talked about maybe reaching out to some of the local agencies. So are there agencies working to train small business owners or prepare them for bonding or making payroll or how to properly prepare or even develop a proper business plan?
Absolutely, and I just mentioned that Prince George's Community College has a small business curriculum forum that they do all the time. The Prince George's County Supply and Diversity Council, they do training and forums all the time, as well as different meet and greets on a monthly basis to try to pull like-minded businesses together so they can start sharing ideas and figure out how do you do teaming agreements, how do you do partnerships, how do you do mentor proteges. Those types of things I think will help our small businesses right here in Prince George's County, but for me, more importantly, in the state of Maryland.
That's good. So let's go into education, because education is one of the biggest issues in Prince George's County. Many feel that their property home value has been lowered because of the education in the county. Some people have talked about what to do. How do we change the education system? In your role as not only the delegate in Prince George's County, but also in leadership in Annapolis and part of the Legislative Black Caucus, what have you observed with the educational system, and what are some of the ways that a state delegate can impact it, or the state as a whole?
Well, let me just say, right here in Prince George's County, we just renewed Kevin Maxwell's contract. First time that we've had a CEO or superintendent renew a contract in I don't even know how many years. So showing that continuity is really important. If you look at Prince George's County Public School System, we now have the highest graduation rate in years. So right here at home, we're making some progress, which I feel real good about. But like anything else, we have a long way to go. I also sit on Ways and Means, which oversees education for the state. I'm also the vice chair of the education subcommittee for the Prince George's County delegation. So focusing in on education is a real critical point for me. I know Delegate Alonzo Washington has been fighting on the forefront and ensuring that we can try to put in some legislation that young people can have their college tuition paid for, especially when you go to Prince George's or community colleges, should I say. We put in making sure that the budget or the money that comes from the state to Prince George's County is there, which is roughly $1.6 billion. So we fight every day to ensure that those dollars are put into the budget so that we can have those monies there. We just had a conversation a couple of days ago with the school board and Dr. Maxwell, and trying to figure out ways in which we can try to increase funding and different funding sources for school construction. Because a lot of our schools here in Prince George's County are old or dilapidated, that they need some repair. So we're working extremely hard for that. But one of the main things that I'm really looking at from the state level that I think will be a benefit here in Prince George's County is community schools. That's a bill that was passed by Delegate Mary Washington out of Baltimore that I believe that model would fit well right here in Prince George's County. And community schools is an opportunity in which businesses partner with our school system to bring additional and added resources to the schools. And I believe that we have enough businesses right here in Prince George's County that we can create those types of community schools and partnerships to help our kids flourish and grow. So there's a lot that we're working on in Annapolis as it relates to education from a statewide perspective. But one of the main things that I'm really looking at that I believe that will really net some fruit for us is the community schools.
Now, when we get into community schools, I do know in Baltimore, they have a partnership with IBM in some of the schools. And I know that that's about to actually initiate it in actually Prince George's County. Now, I want to know, is that something, when we're talking about community schools, are we talking about partnerships with big companies like that? Has there been other discussions with other big companies, maybe STEM related, about partnerships? Absolutely.
One of the main things that we're all looking at is science, technology, engineering, and math. And we have had conversations, and I know that I had with Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin, Apple, and others about creating those community school partnerships right here in the county, and more importantly, right here in District 25. So we're having those conversations. We're trying to build some synergy there to see what it looks like. But that's a real focus for us. Even from the state level, we're looking at from a behavioral health standpoint. How does that resonate with our kids? Because a lot of our kids need that behavioral health component into their health. We don't have enough guidance counselors and things like that within our school system. So we're looking at all of those things from a holistic approach at the state level, and then those things will start trickling down here at the county level.
Now, you said that you oversee, in your capacity on the Ways and Means, you probably look at the school budget overall. Do you see waste or anything that needs to be eliminated because it is such a large budget? Some people don't understand, why isn't it, why isn't this enough money? Why do we need additional monies for construction?
Yeah, I don't think it's, the money that we give to the state, once we obtain that money into the budget, it's really out of our hands. From a state legislator, I've done my job. My job is to bring back resources to the county. And then the county council and the school board, that's when they do their part as far as how they're divvying it up, who's getting what, where the money is going, all of those things. Because we don't have any oversight or any control once we pass the money on. It's almost like running track. I'm running, and then I'm running the first leg, so I'm passing the baton. And once I pass the baton, my job is done.
Were you a track runner?
No, I was a basketball player. Right.
All right, well, we're going to take a short break, and we're going to come back, and we're going to talk more about some of the other issues mentioned, focused by the Legislative Black Caucus, and also what's in it for the 25th District. All right, thank you. Please stay tuned.
So who's going to do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice. And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
We couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
Welcome back to Chat with the Lawyer, and I'm here with Delegate Barnes, and we're going to continue our great discussion about some of the initiatives in Annapolis in the 2017 legislative session. So let's go back. You talked about HBCUs,
yes,
right? Mm-hmm. And that there was focus on that. And as you know, we're in a county that has a high population of those that went to HBCUs, from Howard, Hampton to Bowie State, and the list goes on. So what is the focus for HBCUs in Annapolis?
That lawsuit that the HBCUs have been going through has been there for almost a decade.
And can you go back? What lawsuit?
There's a lawsuit in place on some of the funding and the ways in which HBCUs receive their money, and some of the discrepancies there. Who's getting how much money, who's not getting money. That lawsuit has been in place for almost a decade. And I believe it's not really doing our youth a good service because they're trying to get their education. There was a rally in Baltimore last week where there was almost 600 students that came out to protest that say that, they want equal rights and they want to be able to go to school and get a good education just like their counterparts. So next week in Annapolis, and I forget the date, so I apologize, but there's another rally in Annapolis. We're expecting 1,000 students to come from across the state and protest to the HBCUs.
And specifically when you talk about the lawsuit, what HBCUs are highlighted in this lawsuit, or is it just nationwide?
No, it's all the HBCUs in the state of Maryland.
I see. Okay.
So Bowie State, Coppin State, all of the ones in the state of Maryland are involved in that lawsuit.
And is there legislation introduced or being considered right now to address HBCUs?
Well, there's not per se a piece of legislation, but the forefront for the Black Caucus is to continue to make some noise about it, to continue to make some people aware about what's going on, to get involved, to go down to court, because those court proceedings and hearings are going on as we speak. So we really need folks to get involved from that standpoint, especially our young people, because this affects them every single day. And the Legislative Black Caucus is using the platform that we have to continue to make some noise about it.
That's good. So let's go into Affordable Care Act. I think that that's probably going to be very important. In the coming weeks, we are watching national news where the congressional members are now hinting that they're going to now move forward with the repeal of the Affordable Care Act. And as you mentioned, you said 8% in Prince George's County are without health care. So that could actually substantially increase with the repeal. Now, I know that there's been recent discussions, I think even with our current Congressman, Anthony Brown, who came on the show and actually spoke about the Affordable Care Act. Sure. And how important it was, especially when he was around doing the implementation as Lieutenant Governor. Now, so what are we looking forward to now? What is going to be done by the state? The state actually possibly needs to make some moves if there is going to be a repeal. So what is being done? What is the discussion?
You know, it's a real interesting topic, and it's almost scary. Because with the Affordable Care Act, if the president repeals that, it affects us right here at home. You know, right here in Prince George's County, there's roughly 200,000 people that are on the Affordable Care Act. 200,000. 8% of the population in Prince George's County do not have health insurance as it is. So if we repeal the Affordable Care Act, that's 200,000 more people that would not have health insurance. You know, so there's the Maryland Exchange, there's some other things in which we're trying to move people around. But if the repeal of the Affordable Care Act happens, it will affect almost 473,000 people in the state of Maryland. 473,000 people. And then when you look at the Affordable Care Act being repealed, it affects what we've been working on for years, and that is to bring the Regional Medical Center to Prince George's County. That is in jeopardy now. So what's happening at the federal level is having a trickle-down effect on what's happening here at the state level, but more importantly, what's happening right here in Prince George's County. You know, that Regional Medical Center is something that we have been fighting for and talking about for years, and that we desperately need that here in Prince George's County. Because the old hospital system, Prince George's County Hospital, is old and it's time for it to retire. And we have been working hard, and we finally got our COI, I believe it is, for the Regional Medical Center. But now all of that hard work is in jeopardy because voting has consequences. And we have voted a president in that wants to repeal what President Obama worked so hard for, that now has an effect right here at home.
So going back to the healthcare system, is there going to be something in place for those who lose their health insurance through the Affordable Care Act?
Yeah, the Prince George's County Department of Health and the state of Maryland, like I said, there's the Maryland Exchange, which is a caveat, if you will, of the Affordable Care Act. So we are been working to try to get more people onto the Maryland Exchange for their health insurance, to ensure that those folks have what they need. You know, then we're also talking about Medicaid and how that's going to affect our senior citizens. You know, right now, I forget the number of how many seniors do not have Medicaid. You know, so this is a huge issue, and one that I've been fighting and touting even before I ran for office, that we really need to look at this thing realistically. And then we haven't even talked about our veterans. You know, we have the highest population of veterans right here in Prince George's County. We have 70,000 veterans that live right here in the county. Last check was 28,000 are homeless. So if you had 28,000 homeless, that means that's 28,000 that do not have health insurance. You're already dealing with a population of 8% that don't have insurance. You know, so this thing with health is real critical. You know, and we haven't even talked or touched on mental health. We talked briefly about behavioral health, you know. So the whole health component is real big, and that, you know, we really need to take more of a hands-on approach. We really need to have some real frank conversations on, and we really need to figure out what can we do to ensure that our people right here in Prince George's County are taken care of. You know, there's only so much that I can do, and I've always said, you know, I can jump up on the table and say, you know, enough is enough and we need to do this, but I need some help. You know, I need all your listeners or audience that's watching us today to start calling their elected officials and start asking questions. What are you doing as it relates to the Affordable Care Act? What are you doing to ensure that, you know, we're covered? That's what we need. We need for everybody to be as concerned and passionate about it as I am, so we can make sure that everybody's covered.
So going back to the hospital, you mentioned that the hospital is at this point in jeopardy. Now, can you go over, because a lot of people kind of thought that this was a sealed deal. This was, the county was going to have a regional hospital right here in actually the 25th district.
Absolutely.
And now it's not going to happen. So people don't quite understand what is going on.
Well, right now, you know, there's still funding that has to be allocated to the budget for the hospital. You know, and I have a meeting next week with the chair of appropriations, Delegate Maggie McIntosh, to find out, you know, to ensure that those dollars are actually there for the hospital. You know, all the necessary paperwork has been signed, but there's still funding that has to be there, you know, which the governor controls. You know, and the governor is saying that, you know, he wants to allocate money for all these other projects, would then take away money for the hospital itself. You know, so there's a whole bunch of inner circle movement going on and things working to ensure that this hospital is in place. And then once again, with the Affordable Care Act, it just puts a bigger cloud over the situation that we really have to get a handle on. So we have to work closely now with more than ever with our federal counterparts like Anthony Brown and Steny Hoyer and Ben Cardin and all of those folks, and really sink in what we're doing to ensure that the funding and things from the state, from the federal level, that they're doing all that they can to stop this repeal, because that repeal is going to have an effect on us here.
Now, speaking of working with the federal delegation and in the state, let's talk about the FBI headquarters, because that has been a concern. Many people weren't sure if it was going to Landover or Greenbelt, and now this was a discussion during the Obama administration. We're now looking at a Trump administration. What's to come? Will we see the FBI headquarters in Prince George's County?
That's another good question. You know, because with President Trump now in office, he literally has the power to say, I don't want the FBI to move. I want it to stay right where it is at the Hoover Building in Washington, D.C. He has that ability. And then just looking at his mindset, there's no telling what he may or may not do. But let's say he goes along with the status quo. Prince George's County is in a real good position to land a hospital. And right now there's two different sites that we're looking at, either Greenbelt or Landover. By all accounts and conversations that I've been in, Greenbelt looks like the front runner should Prince George's County get it. So, and then there's conversation on the sale of the Hoover Building in Annapolis, in Washington, D.C., because that's all contingent on the move and where they're going to go. And that's a prime piece of property in Washington, D.C. So they're working two angles and to see that we're going to get that FBI here. But if it does come to Prince George's County, you're talking about 10,000 employees moving to that new facility. You're talking about maybe a third of them that will relocate to buy housing. So that's going to help us right here in Prince George's County. You talk about from an economic standpoint, these people are eating and shopping and going to the dry cleaners. So now, you know, that's more money for our tax revenue. So this is a big deal for that FBI to come to Prince George's County, because it helps us on all fronts.
If anybody wants to contact you for any of the information that you've discussed on this show, how would they get in contact with you?
I would ask them to contact my office. They can reach out to my Chief of Staff, Darryl Miller, at area code 301-858-3557.
All right, thank you. And it is an honor to have my own delegate on our show, and look forward to great things.
Yes, ma'am.
And if you want to catch more episodes of this show or get more information about lawyers or other guests that have come on the show, you can go to our website at www.chatwiththelawyer.tv. Thank you.